lost the trade war with China. Joe Biden never fought it. Joe Biden has been a cheerleader for communist China over the last several decades. And again, Senator Harris, you're entitled to your opinion. You're not entitled to your own facts.
Gordon, what do you make of how the Vice President and Kamala Harris sparred over China yesterday? Was there any movement? Was there anything clarified by it?
I don't know if anything was clarified by it, but I think this was one of the Vice President's strongest moments of the night. And I think it's actually Kamala Harris's weakest point of the evening, because the Obama administration, they had a view that climate change was absolutely critical, and they were going to ignore all sorts of things in order to get Beijing to sign on to the Paris Accord. So clearly, the Vice President was right. Now, people can say that's a good thing, but the point is, it's a fact.
Do you think that the Trump-Pence campaign has focused enough on China, and do you think they focused on it in the right way? Some of the arguments about China seem a little bit abstract. I mean, I deeply believe in human rights, and I know you do too. I also worry about the region that China's trying to dominate, whether it's Japan or India. I don't know if that resonates in places like Wisconsin, Ohio, Michigan, but I know the job stuff does. Do you think the Republican campaign has been strong enough? Do you think they've had the right focus on China? I'm worried it hasn't been talked about enough.
Yeah, I think the administration could make a much stronger case on its China policy. So, for instance, last night, I would have liked to have heard the Vice President say, look, those tariffs that Kamala Harris complained about, those are imposed as a remedy for the theft of U.S. intellectual property. And he should have asked her, well, what are you going to do about it? Because when Biden was vice president for 8 years, the administration just ignored it. Or when they actually did something, which was rare, they took actions that they knew were ineffective. Mm-hmm. So, for instance, they indicted Chinese military officers in the Western District of Pennsylvania, Pittsburgh. But, that was symbolic. And so I think that essentially the administration has a much stronger argument, but it has not been making it during this campaign.
Mm-hmm. If I recall from the presidential debate, Trump talked about Hunter Biden and China. That felt more like a corruption issue or a scandal issue than a national interest issue. I mean, I think it irritated Joe Biden, but I'm not sure if it moved votes. I think it really is the largest piece of the puzzle that'll be the largest thing that'll be different if Trump or Biden, if one of them wins and the other doesn't. I mean, there'll be climate issues that are different. There's tax issues. There might be some racial justice issues that are different. But I think the number one difference between a Trump reelection or a Biden election will be on China's role in the world. I think it's that critical an issue. What do you think? I mean, I know this is your area of expertise. Let me throw one more thing at you before you answer. Nathan Vanderclip, who is a Canadian journalist in China, was watching the debate on Chinese TV. And when Mike Pence referred to China, take a look at this. The screen was blacked out. And on Chinese TV, it said no signal. So they literally were censoring Mike Pence in real time. That tells me China thinks this is a critical election and they've made their choice.
Well, they certainly have, because the trend of Communist Party and state propaganda has been to unseat President Trump. Also, when we start to look at their troll and bot operations, those have been directed against the president as well. And when state media or party media has talked about the candidates, it said nice things about Biden and horrible things about President Trump. Mm-hmm. So clearly, Beijing has picked its choice in this election, and it's doing a lot to try to unseat President Trump. President Trump was headed cruising to a re-election victory before the coronavirus hit. And since that time, he's now far behind in the polls. It's really disrupted the campaign. I'm not saying that Beijing released the coronavirus to unseat Trump, but we do know that Xi Jinping, the Chinese ruler, took steps that he knew or had to know would spread the disease beyond China's borders. Mm-hmm. So there is a direct causal relationship in all of this.
Yeah. If I recall, he shut down flights from Wuhan to Beijing, from Wuhan to Shanghai, but not from Wuhan to the Western countries.
Yeah, there's two things. First of all, Xi Jinping knew the coronavirus was highly contagious. but he told the world that it was not. And at the same time, he was pressuring countries not to impose those travel restrictions and quarantines on arrivals from China when he was imposing similar measures inside China itself. So he knew those measures were effective, and he knew that by leaning on other countries, he was taking a step to spread the disease. So, Ezra, this, the fact that we have all these infections around the world, all these deaths, 1 million deaths, 7 million infections, that's because China took steps to make sure that happened.
That's an excerpt from my daily show, The Ezra Levant Show. Every day I do a monologue on the news of the day, then I interview an interesting guest, and then I read my hate mail. You gotta subscribe. Go to rebelnews.com.